Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. I'm your host, Viz, and tonight we welcome writer director Nyla Innuksuk. Nyla, thank you so much for being here with us. Nyla's new movie is called Slashback. It is premiering in theaters, digital, and video on demand October 21st, which is tomorrow. Nyla, again, thank you so much for being here. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
The
How are you
movie
doing?
the movie was like we talked about before we got started. It was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So let's get right into it. The movie focuses on the Inuit indigenous people. How important was it to tell this story through the Inuit people?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm myself am Inuk. I grew up in Nunavut. So for me, it was more just about making a movie that felt both like the movies that I grew up watching, but also just reflective of this place that I grew up and loved.
Awesome. Now, you picked a lot of first time kid actors to play out the major roles. And I have to say, they make the movie, okay?
They're
Now,
so sweet.
how did you cast these kids for the particular roles that you put them in?
Yeah, it was a really interesting process to try and find the cast and work with the cast. And I've been working with these actors for quite a few years now, so it's been so nice to see them grow up with the movie. When I first started casting, I knew that it was going to be a bit of a challenge because there's no casting agents in
Hmm.
Nunavut. And so I essentially held these casting workshops. I got a local actor, Christine Tutu, who is a friend of mine and who ended up working in our props department, actually. And so we invited young women out to come for acting workshops. And I had these sides from the proof of concept. I was going to make a short film that essentially would give the tone and style of the movie
Hmm.
in order to help get it financed. And so, in the process of doing these workshops, I was trying different girls with each other and eventually found as some of the cast that would make up the cast of the proof of concept. And then once we started moving forward with the development of the movie, I worked a lot with the cast. We would go out on boats, we'd go out to
Hmm.
cabins, hang out, and watch scary movies. And so they definitely influenced the script in different ways as well.
It sounds like you made it like a really fun environment for them. Once the camera started rolling and you spent all that time with them, did you find that they needed a lot of direction or did you sort of let them loose?
It was such an interesting process. And now talking with the girls, we all because it was the first time for me directing, it was the first time they had ever acted in a movie, so we were all learning so much in the process of making the movie. And they even will say like, oh, I wish we could make the movie again because we feel like we would do such a better job. Like they were getting better as the movie was going along, which I just think is so sweet. And so yeah, it's been so great to see just them grow as actors um, and just along the process. They definitely. I wouldn't say that they definitely loosened up as actors,
Hmm.
but the the script was essentially what they stuck with as we were shooting.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now, Micah is sort of one of the main character girls. Did I pronounce the name right? Micah or
Yeah,
Mika? Micah.
Micah.
Now, she's the one that sort of, disregards the culture. It's all folklore, it's all fake. I want to get out of this town. While some of the other girls are the complete opposite. What were you trying to depict with how some girls felt as opposed to others?
Yeah, I definitely felt like when I was growing up as an indigenous teenager, when you're a teenager, you're trying to figure out
Hmm.
who you are and where you fit in, and where your indigeneity fits into that. And I definitely noticed when I was hanging out with the teenage cast that some of that shame would just be reflected in the way that they would speak about themselves.
Yeah.
And that some of that shame would affect the dynamics of the friendships as well. One of the things that sometimes would come up is they say, "Oh, that's so Inuk," and they would mean it in a negative way.
Yeah.
And then we would have a conversation. We'd say, "Oh, what do you mean by that? What do you mean when you say, oh, that's so Inuk?" And then it would, and then we would talk about the importance of trying to use prideful language when we're talking about where we come from and our Inukness, because even if we might not be at that point yet, that our goal is to be proud Indigenous women.
Warriors, as we see at the end of the film as well. Now, as I was watching this film, it's very hard not to draw the comparison to John Carpenter's The Thing. Okay, you got Near the Arctic Circle, you've got aliens mimicking people. So, what, if any, role did The Thing play in your direction?
I grew up loving horror and sci-fi, and so I definitely drew a lot of inspiration from different movies that I grew up loving. I would say the biggest inspiration that The Thing had on the movie was really with the practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
I love the effects in The Thing, and we also, me and the cast, we love that movie too. The night before, we actually shot. We shot our first day. We had a sleepover, and we were all living together in a school. And we had a little sleepover, and we watched the movie together and ate so much junk food. And so it was definitely something that was just a reference for us. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, one of the characters references the movie in the script. And but for me, it was really fun to kind of give a nod to
A classic.
kind of creature work.
Yeah, a classic in the horror industry, absolutely. Now, is this is an alien movie? I mean, like we talked about, it's an alien. Now, is the alien sort of a monster in the Inuit folklore, or does everybody realize by the end of the film that this is not part of our folklore? This is not part of our history. This is something from another planet. It doesn't belong
Yeah.
here.
I wanted to play it as aliens.
Okay.
I also, what I love about being in the Arctic is that we do have all of these stories and creatures that exist within our traditional stories, and that we have, I mean, just with all cultures have children's stories that are
Hmm.
cautionary tales. In the Arctic, it's just very, very dangerous. There's lots of things that are scary. So our children's stories are really terrifying. So we have lots of different creatures that will steal children if you get too close to cracks in the ice,
Yeah.
or if you wander off alone. And so just kind of growing up in a place where you kind of have all of these creatures that exist, or you have elders that will tell you about their experiences with these creatures when they were younger. It just kind of creates this sense of mystery,
Yeah.
and so kind of having those as just having it set in a place like this, and then having those as almost red herrings was kind
And,
of fun.
and that stretches through almost every culture, stories like that. It's to keep children
Yeah,
basically away from doing stuff they're not supposed to. Now,
exactly.
now, what kind of challenges were presented to you shooting near the Arctic Circle? I mean, you could tell it was the middle of summer, I assume, I hope. Um,
Yeah.
but still, the snow, was it challenging?
Yeah. So I've shot in the Arctic in the winter time, and that was crazy. So I was like, never, let's not do that. Um, and it's also so beautiful in the summer with the 24-hour sunlight, and it's not a kind of a version of the Arctic that I think people are familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely, we have been told by producers that they had scouted this community and that it was impossible to film there, and it was basically true. We learned, but this is a really special community to me. Hollywood is the capital. There's been movies that have been shot there
Hmm.
a couple of times, but I'm from as one of these small communities that are fly-in communities, about 1,500 people, and my nephews are from Pang, which is they're 5 and 7, and and the idea and Pang itself is just one of the most beautiful places I've ever been.
Yeah.
It's a tiny, remote community nestled in the middle of these gigantic mountains,
Hmm.
these fjords carved by glaciers. And so to be able to film in this place was something that I just thought would be so special. But it's got a million challenges. That it's really really expensive to get to, so there's that. But then also there's not enough housing for the people that live there. So for
Wow.
us to kind of bring in a crew and be this imposition in the summertime, and then all the food comes in on planes, cargo planes
Hmm.
that are also passenger planes. But the amount of food that's brought up to the community is like based on like the people that live there. So we would also be imposing on the food supply, and then there are these ships that come in with food in the summer, but we'd be there early. So that's actually at the time when there's like the least amount of food in town, and all the prices are really expensive. So it was so we had to kind of figure out ways to be flying in our own food as well.
Yeah.
But I went to the principals at both of the public school and the high school, and I asked if we could move in. And so essentially, as soon as classes were done, we shipped up 60 beds and mattresses and turned all the classrooms into
Like like
housing.
dormitories. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was 24-hour sunlight, so we're having to like black out the windows. And we've got these like professional crew people who are like coming up, and then everybody gets a roommate, and living in a school. All of our meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, is served in the high school gym because there's no restaurants in town. And it was, but the kind of people that sign up for something like that are really amazing. And
Oh
so we
yeah.
had this really incredible crew. The cast had an awesome time.
It sounds
Uh,
like you guys just had an amazing time. Now, when it came to how you were going to show the alien to the audience, is that something you wrestled with before you ended up with what we actually see?
yeah, that was a really fun process, and it kind of was something. I mean, making movies is such a collaborative thing.
Hmm.
You get to work with some really incredible artists and people that are really talented what they do, and I think making movies is really special because it just like that. I do think it's more fun,
Yeah.
and so to kind of figure out what the creatures how they would work, that was something that me and my co-writer figured out in terms of like we knew they were going to be creatures made up of tentacles, and they would take over the bodies of animals and wear their skins as disguises. So that was like this kind of fun thing to figure out with Ryan. And then getting to work with Troy James, this incredible contortionist. I was like, how do you get them to move? Like, how will
Yeah.
they move? And Troy, he can just do the craziest things with his body. It really is double jointed in every joint. And so working with him to kind of figure out what the movement would be. And then we had Ophelio, who did more of the stunt heavy stuff. And then whenever there was two creatures that in skin suits needed at once, then they would both be on screen together. And then getting to work with these like really awesome nerds to make the VFX and all the tentacles and all of that stuff was like this fun creative thing that we got to do after it was all done.
What was
So
real
it was really fun at different stages.
what was really fun is seeing when these aliens were trying to imitate these human beings. Like the aliens, they just stumbled upon this planet. They have no idea about us, but they're trying to imitate our movements. And I got to tell you, when the people are were infected by the alien, and we see how they look, that also reminded me of like Leatherface and Texas
Yeah.
Chainsaw Massacre. Was that done intentionally?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I loved growing up. I loved like Ed Gein and all of the inspiration that was drawn from him. I love Psycho
Yeah,
and Leatherface, of course, and also what I loved about Leatherface also was that he walked around in daylight,
yeah,
which was fun. And so getting to kind of like play with a lot of those things was really fun, and getting to then have the actors and Natak, who played the fisherman who gets killed, is kind of like a indigenous acting royalty to us, and so to get to have play with him and like turn him into a monster was really fun.
Now, this is your feature film directorial debut. After it was all said and done with, was the experience what you expected it to be, doing your first full feature film?
Oh my gosh, it was not at all what I thought it would be. I think that if I had known, it was a million lessons a day that I was learning. I think that if I knew how crazy it was to make a movie, I think I would have probably chosen a less bonkers movie to start with. But I'm so grateful to the experience, and I'm so proud of the cast and what we were able to do. But it really was like such a crazy experience, and so many lessons learned, and but it's in an exciting way. It kind
Yeah,
of was like, okay, as soon as I was finished, I was like, that's how you make a movie. I'm ready to do it now. Let's
yeah.
go. And I kind of still am feeling that kind of like, okay, how can we take lessons that we learned from this and just try and get better the next time?
Putting that first one in the can and ready to go. I mean, it must be just a huge relief. Now, you did not shy away from special effects in this movie. I don't know what the budget was, but regardless, you used whatever budget you had very effectively. There was definitely no lack of blood. We got a great view of the aliens themselves, the whole Leatherface masks, the polar bear that was infected. That was great. Was it all practical effects, or was there any CGI?
Yeah, it was kind of a mix of both. And this was not a big budget movie,
Mhm.
so we were really stretching whatever we could do. But I also loved the look of practical effects and even the campiness of some of the practical effects. So with the bear, I actually had this full bear suit made for Troy to wear, but he has to wear it backwards, like walking backwards and
Mhm.
upside down. It was like really uncomfortable for him, and it looked so crazy and really cool, but crazy.
It was. It
and
was.
so and so we did replace some of the bear with CG elements, but matched the kind of wackiness of the movements.
Hmm.
And then in different in kind of it certainly enhanced some blood with extra blood, and then added in some all the tentacle stuff with CG and
Very nicely done. It was. I gotta admit, very, very nicely done. One final question before we go. Uh, are you glad and happy? I know you're glad and happy you made this film, but about showing the world the Inuit people who had no idea about the Inuit people and what their life was like and their warriors and their customs and their folklores. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I think that there's not a ton of Inuit, and we are way up at the top of the world. And I think that there is. So I've realized that not a lot of people are familiar with
Hmm.
what we're all about, and that also that they might think that we exist in this time long ago. And so
Yeah.
it's been. I've gotten some comments about. How modern the girls are, and I think so. It's what's been kind of funny to me is it never occurred to me to kind of make a period piece or anything like that, but it was this kind of realization that people aren't necessarily familiar with seeing Indigenous teenagers in this kind of modern context.
Hmm.
And so I think that's been great. I think it's and it's been so nice for my cast to be able to just grow with the movie. I mean, and be really proud of it and be able to be proud of where they come from and share that with different audiences.
A little bit off topic, but I was watching a documentary not too long ago, and the Inuit people, which like started in Siberia, they were like the first to cross over into North America. So there's a lot of history there, and I'm glad
It's
that
really interesting. You could see people in like northern Russia that look so much like my
yeah,
aunt.
absolutely, it was great. Nyla, you did a fantastic job. Thank you so much for coming on here. Again,
Thank
guys, the movie is called Slashback. It is available October 21st in theaters, digital, and on demand. So be sure to check it out. This movie is great. Great story, great acting, great directing, and it's going to really impress you with the amount of special effects and the horror element and everything else. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
No, thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was total fun. On behalf of Nyla and myself, I want to thank our audience who tuned in live and those of you who'll be watching this later on. Stay safe and stay walking, everybody. Bye bye.